Yes, in the previous video we have seen the concepts of constructors. Now let us continue with the examples for the constructor. Okay, so we can consider the same example, box model. So class box, inside the class box you have three variables: width, height and depth, which is of type double. And now, as I said previously, so constructor will have the same name as the class name, and it won't have any return type. Okay, so so you are not going for, not even void also, so you are not giving any return type for constructors. So you are just taking the class name, and it looks like a method, isn't it? It looks like a normal function. So box followed by that parenthesis inside the brackets. What you're going to do, you are going to write one print statement saying that constructing box. Okay, now after printing that, you are assigning some values to those variables. For width you are assigning 10, for height you are assigning 10, and for depth also you are assigning 10. So now after that, what happens? After that, you are going to create one method called volume. Okay, so it has got return type. The return type is double. So that means this volume method, after the calculation, this volume method will return one value. Okay, it will return a value which is of type double. So ultimately, that is what is the meaning means. So after multiplying width, height and depth, ultimately you are going to get one value. So, and you are going to pass that particular value to the calling method. Okay, calling function or calling method. So in this case, for this example, so it is the 10 into 10 into 10. So you may not get some point values, but in some cases the height may be, say for example, 7.3. The width may be, say, 13.8. For depth maybe, say for example, 11. So something like that. So you may get some double value also. But for safer side, in the example, what they have done, they just have taken, by default they just have taken the return type as double for this particular method. Now once you have written the method, what happens now? Then your work is to create the main method. So I already said, in Java, with inside the box itself you are going to write some inside the class itself you are going to write the main method. So in this case, you have one more class called box model. Okay, sorry, box demo 6. Okay, inside that you have main method. Inside the main method, what you are going to do, so you are going to create two objects. So my box 1 object as well as my box 2 object. You have to remember, when you create an object, what happens? You are automatically calling this constructor. So you are going to get, whenever you create the object, whenever you start to create the object, at that time this constructing box will print out, print on the monitor, on the screen, in the output screen, and then you are assigning, by default you are assigning 10 10 10 to the width, height and depth. Okay, now what happens? Now the next thing is, you are creating the box, my box 2, the second object. Then you are declaring one variable called vol, which is of type double. Okay, now once you are done with that, then what you are going to do, you are going to call the volume method. Okay, now see, explicitly you did not assign the values anywhere. It is like a implicit one, isn't it? So what you are going to do, you are just creating an object from the main method. Now by default you are calling the constructor, and inside the constructor you have written the code so that width, height and depth will be initialized with the value 10. Okay, so now what happens? Now you are going to call, you are using object 1 dot, you are going to call volume method. So when you call that output screen will be there, and you are going to see the output as constructing box. Okay, for the object 1, and then you are assigning the values for width, height and depth. After that, what happens? After that, you are going to print the value of vol. Okay, volume. Okay, now because you have in the volume method you have return type as double, so obviously you are going to return width into height into depth. The returned value will come and sit in vol variable, and the same thing will be printed using system.out.println. Volume is that volume value plus vol means that volume value. Now after that, what happens? After that, you are going for the second object or second box. Okay, now what you are going to do, again you are going to use mybox2 dot volume. You are going to save the same value. You are going to call the volume method, and you are going to get the values for that volume method, and the same thing will be printed using system.out.println volume is vol. Okay, so in this case you have two concepts. One is you are using the constructor and you are assigning the values to those variables, and in this case inside the main method you have two objects, mybox1 as well as mybox2. Whenever you create an object, constructor will be by default, you are going to call the constructor. That is the thing. So this is the example for constructor. Okay, so if you have the system, you can try to execute this code. If you get an error, you just get back to me. Okay, for next thing is adding a method that takes parameter. So this is the continued version of that methods. Okay, so yesterday I just have given information about methods, including the methods inside the class, isn't it? So here little change, you have a little bit change here. So what is that? So you are writing the method, or you are adding the method which takes the parameter. Okay, now see, while some methods don't need parameters, most to do. Okay, parameters allow a method to be generalized. That is, a parameterized method can operate on a variety of data and or be used in a number of slightly different situations. So the based on the situation you can use it, you can make use of it. And parameterized in the sense you can pass the values to that particular method, so that that method can make use of that data. Okay, that is the main thing. Now so you can see the syntax over there. So first one is without parameter. So what is that? The return type is int, the method name is square, inside the square you have return 10 into 10. Okay, that is one instruction is available. But in the second example with the parameter, what happens? The return type is int, method name is square, inside the square you have one parameter, that is I. So I will have integer value, that is the meaning. Now what happens? Now here return I into I. So whatever the value you pass when you call square method, the same value will be multiplied twice and it will be returned to the calling method. That is the thing. Fine. So you can see one example also here. So we have considered the same class box. Inside the class you have three variables, width, height and depth of type double. Then you have one method called volume, double volume, which will return width, height and depth. And you have one more the method called set dimension or set dim, setdim. So it is void, you are not returning anything, it is just a return type is void. So set dim method, inside the set dim method you have again three variables, double w, double h, double d. So next what you are going to do, you are using this whd to assign the respective variables, that is width, height and depth. Now from where you are going to get the values, I am going to show you here inside the main method. Okay, you have class demo 5, box demo 5, public static void main. So inside the main method you have two objects, mybox1 and mybox2. So you have one variable called vol. Next, using object 1 you are going to call the method set dimension, and you are passing 10, 20 and 15. Okay, now where you are going to pass, using object 1 you are trying to call set dimension method, and to that set dimension method you are going to call 10, 20 and 15. The same 10, 20 and 15 will sit in w, h and d. You have to think like that. Okay, so whenever you pass the value from main method, the same value will sit in the method definition. Whatever the method definition you have written is there in the parameter list, in that position this 10, 20 and 15 will sit, and the same 10, 20 and 15 will be initialized to width, height and depth variables. Okay, so in the same case you are using second object mybox2. Again you are calling set dimension set dim method, and you are passing, in this case you are passing 3, 6 and 9. Now same 3, 6 and 9 will go and sit in whd. Now you may get one doubt here. Okay, so sir, you have said previously in the explanation, you have said in W, H and D you are passing 10, 20 and 15. Now how can you pass a new value, whether it is not like it may be overwriting, isn't it? Usually what happens whenever you use variable, if you give a new value, so it is something like the previous value will be vanished. You are overwriting the values, whatever the values you are giving in the recent time. But in this case what happens, I already said, whenever you create the object, for each and every object the memory will be allocated. For each and every variable the separate copy of memory will be allocated. Okay, that means for my box 1 the value of width, height and depth will be 10, 20 and 15. For my box 2, that is a second object, where width value will be 3, height value will be 6 and depth value will be 9. Because why? Because each and every object will have its own copy of memory, its own copy of space where you can fit all this data. Okay, this is how this object concept work. You probably know about this concept from your C++ subject itself, but I just try to refresh your previous knowledge. Okay, now what is the next thing? You are using vol variable and equal to my box 1, the first object dot volume. You are going to call volume method. Now what volume method will do? Volume method will return the multiplied values of width, height and depth. Now you are calling from which object? You are calling the volume method using my box 1 object. Now that is the reason why as you are calling, as you are using my box 1 object, what is the value stored in my box 1 objects variable? That is height, width and depth. So 10, 20 and 15, because you are calling the volume method from object 1. That is the reason why you are by default passing the values of object 1, that is nothing but 10, 20 and 15. So it will return 10 into 20 into 15, 3000. That value 3000 will be returned to first VOL, because you called volume method using my box 1, the first object. Okay, now you are going to print that volume value. Now after that what happens? You are going to call the volume method using second object. Now what is the values of second object? The second object value will be 3, 6 and 9. So what happens? You are going to call volume method, you are going to calculate 3 into 6 into 9, the same value will be returned to the calling method, that is nothing but VOL, and you are going to print the VOL value using system.out.println. Understood? So based on from which object you are calling the method, by default that those values will be passed to the methods. Okay, and it will be calculated and it will be returned to the calling method. Okay, calling function or method. Usually I am not using the word function, so don't get confused, both are equal. The terminology differs. Okay, so this is the example. Now you have something called parameterized constructor. So previously you have seen just constructor, but in this case, in this example, you are seeing parameterized constructor. So while the box constructor is the preceding example does initialize a box object, it is not very useful. All the box have same dimensions. What is needed is a way to construct the box object of various dimension, isn't it? So that the previous example, it was static, because whenever you call box, by default 10, 10, 10 will be initialized to height, width and depth, isn't it, in the previous constructor example. But when you want the dimensions for each and every object, if the dimension needs to be changed, that time this parameterized constructor will come into picture. Okay, so the easy solution to add the parameter to the constructor is probably using more useful. To make it more useful, you can go for parameterized one. Okay, so you are considering the same class box, inside that width, height and depth, and you have one constructor. In this particular case, the constructor will have three variables, W, H and D, and the same W, H and D will be initialized to width, height and depth. Now you have double volume, so separate method return, it will return width, height and depth. Okay, now what happens next is class box demo. Okay, you have one class, inside the class you have main method. Inside the main method, when you create the object, by default you are passing the values to that object. Okay, now box, my box 1 equal to new box of 10, 20, 15 means what happens? You are calling box this box constructor, and by default you are passing 10, 20 and 15. W equal to 10, H equal to 20, D equal to 15. Same, 10 will be initialized to width, 20 will be initialized to height, and 15 will be initialized to depth when you create my box 1 object. Okay, now for my box 2 object, what happens? Box space my box 2 equal to new box of 3, 6 and 9. What is it? Now you are creating second object my box 2, and you are again calling the what you are calling? You are calling the constructor. And now in this particular case, as you are using second object, you are initializing W equal to what is the value? Where is it? 369. Okay, so W will be 3, H will be 6 and D will be 9. The same 369 will be initialized to width, height and depth for second object my box 2. For my box 2, these three value will be initialized. Okay, now using double using you have one more variable called volume, VOL. Now VOL equal to my box 1 dot volume. Now what happens? You using first object, you are going to call volume method. So what is the value initialized using first object? That is 10, 20 and 15. So values of height, width and depth will be 10, 20 and 15. So from volume method you are going to return the calculated value of 10 into 20 into 15 for my box 1, the first object. For second object, what you are doing? You have the value of 369. The same 369 will be initialized to where it is, initialized to double volume method, that is nothing but 3 into 6 into 9. The same will be returned to the calling method. So here you are going to print the volume, second volume value. Now see, you can see the output of the program also. For volume is 3000 for my box 1, the first object. Now volume is 162 for what? Second object, my box 2. Why? Because you have passed 369 values to the constructor. Okay, so this is the example for parameterized constructor. Fine. Now the next thing is the new operator in Java. So recently you have used so many times that new operator. Okay, now in depth we can see in the help in a creation of object also you used new operator. Now how you can make use of new operator and what is the use of new operator, we will see now. The new operator is used in Java to create new object. Okay, it can also be used to create an array object. Let us first see the steps when creating the object from a class. Okay, first one is declaration. A variable declaration with the variable name with an object type. So that is just a declaration thing. Now instantiation, what happens? The new keyword is used to create the object, isn't it? Box space my box 1. That my box 1 is just a declaration concept, isn't it? My box 1 equal to new space box method, like in the braces, parenthesis, isn't it? So you have parenthesis. So box space my box 1 equal to new space box and parenthesis. So that new operator is nothing but instantiation. Using that new operator you are going to create the object. Now initialization. What is initialization? The new keyword is followed by a call to the constructor. This call initialize the new object. Okay, that call will create the new object. Now what happens? Next thing, you can see the example there. So public class demo. Okay, now public class demo, inside that you have one constructor demo, and it will take one parameter name string, so of type string. Okay, so this particular constructor will take the parameter name. Okay, now system.out.println you have written the passed name is plus name. You have written that plus name. Now we will see how to pass the parameter. How to pass the value. Okay, now you have main method, public static void main. Inside the main method, what happens? You are going to create the object called my demo. So the syntax is class name space the variable, that reference variable name equal to, or object name, I can say object name equal to new operator. That time the object will be created, and again you are writing class name, and inside the parenthesis what you are doing in the double quotes, you are passing the value called Jackie. Now this Jackie will go and sit in the constructor's parameter, that is nothing but name variable. Okay, now the same name variable will be printed on the monitor. Okay, this is how this particular new operator in Java works. So new operator is used to create the object. Okay, new operator is used to create the object, and when you create the object you can pass the parameter, and the same parameter will sit in constructor, and the same data can be used for printing or for any calculations. In this case you have passed name for the constructor, but if you want to calculate for some numbers, you can do that. Just you can pass the number, and the same number will sit in the constructor's parameter, and you can perform any operation using those numbers. Okay, this is how new operator works. Okay, for this video this is enough. If you have any doubt you can ask me. So rest of the things we will see in the next video. So whenever you get a time, whenever you have the resources, please do try these programs. If you get any error, just get back to me, and if you have any doubt you can contact me. Okay, yes, thanks for watching.